Thank you so much. It's very inspirational, both on a personal level and kind of a call to action professionally as well, to bring our expertise to bear. So thank you so much. Our last speaker is Professor Peng. Professor Peng is the director of the Institute of Population Research at Fudan University in Shanghai. In 1982, he received his bachelor's in economics at Fudan University, and from 83 to 88, he studied and received his master's and PhD in population studies from the London School of Economics. He returned to Fudan in November 1988, became a professor in 91, and his main interests include China's population dynamics and population policy, social security and aging, population and sustainable development, and issues related to gender, poverty, and the labor force. So, welcome, Professor Peng.
Thank you, Laurie. I feel honored to talk to the IHDP community some of my thoughts on the relationship between population and the environment in China. China, over the last 60 years, experienced a profound demographic transition, except from the figure we can see, except for the fluctuations between 1958 to 1962. It's caused by economic crisis, knows the Great Leap Forward. Except for that period, China's mortality declined very constantly. And then the birth rate declined from the peak of the early 1960s, started to decline. And at this moment, China's life expectancy also increased steadily up to 72 years for the whole China. So in the early 1950s, China's life expectancy is 43 years old. Now it's 72 years old. Similarly, the fertility rate dropped to below replacement level since the middle 1990s, with large regional and rural-urban differences. So the China's fertility decline is initiated by the government-sponsored family planning programs, then facilitated by the people's volunteer participation in the later stages of the fertility transition. On average, each Chinese couple has about 1.6 to 1.8 children at the present. So it's well below the replacement level. So even with this kind of the very low growth rate and very low fertility rate, and gradually increase the life expectancy, China's the population growth rate has been declining from 1.38% in the year 1980 to 0.5% in the year 2007. So the growth rate is very declining very sharply, but the absolute annual increment remained very huge. Total Chinese population reached 1 billion in the year 1982, 1.1 billion in 1995, and 1.3 billion in 2006. So in every less than 10 years, China's population will add more 100 million. So it means the rate of the growth is slower, it's smaller, but the absolute number of the increment is very huge. So now here we present the projections. So this projection is far simpler compared to the sophisticated projection made by Professor Lutz and his groupers. So here we only change the total fertility rate. Now make other things be constant. So we can see that if we maintain the current fertility rate as a TFR equal to 1.8, then the total Chinese population will reach the peak by the year 2030. So at that time, the total Chinese population will be roughly around 1.47 billion. So if the fertility rate raised a while, about a 10% increase of the total fertility rate from current level, the total Chinese population will reach 1.6 billion. So the difference is something like the 150 million, just as the very small changes of the fertility rate in China. So this means because the large population base, any small changes of China's population dynamics will result in a huge difference in terms of population size, and also will affect China's population structures. Now, with this kind of the continued population growth, Chinese population is rapidly aging. Now, here I use the YASA's projections for the age pyramid from 1950 to the year 2050. So from this, we can see very clearly China is rapidly aging, and gradually we from a very young age structure to a relatively old age structure. Yeah. Then the elder population has already passed in China 100 million mark in the year 2005. They account for 7% of the total Chinese population, and it will exceed 300 million by the middle of 21st century. So it means that on the one hand, we have the continued population growth. On the other hand, we have the continued increase of the elderly population. And from this figure, we can see on the one hand, the elderly population is increasing very steadily and very rapidly. On the other hand, the working age population will decline. So this means China will face a serious aging problem in the next 10 to 20 years. Along with this kind of the continued population growth with the rapid aging, China also experienced a very rapid urbanization process. The proportion of urban to total population increased from less than 20% in the year 1978 up to almost 45% in the year 2007, and may reach 75% in the year 2030. It all depends on the future circumstance. So at this moment, 585 million people are classified as urban residents in China. So because over the last 10 years and to the future, China launched its ambitious urbanization program, aiming to transfer as more as 10 million rural farmers annually into urban areas over the next 20 years. So it means China will also experience a very rapid urbanization process. So this kind of urbanization process, together with the internal migration, so makes the Chinese people has increasingly concentrated in the eastern coast area, particularly in Yangtze River Delta area, Pearl River Delta, and the Beijing-Tianjin areas. So these are becoming the three major metropolitan centers in China. So this means the Chinese people will more and more concentrated along the coast area. So this also will have profound impact on the future global warming and the rising of the sea levels. So to summarize, we can see that China's population is increasing with slower rate. The second, the Chinese population is rapidly aging. The third, the urbanization is reshaping China's map. So along with this kind of the population dynamics, China also witnessed a very rapid economic growth over the last 3 decades. We just celebrated 30 years of China's openness. So over the last 30 years, China's GDP increased by 11 times. Total consumption is 7.5 times. Together with the energy consumption increased by 4 times. And also during the last this kind of 30 years, China's population increased by 30%. China's the green production increased also by more than 30%. So that's we can see this kind of trend over the last 30 years. Now, the rapid economic growth increases rural people's income, allowing them to escape from the absolute poverty of the past and to focus on the improvement of their quality of life. Here I just give you some examples how the electrical appliance used by the Chinese farmers. We can see the most change happened for the rural family household is the TV sets. Over the last 30 years, we can see that at this moment, 117 TV sets are used for every family household in rural area, 37 washing machines, and 17 refrigerators and 4.7 air conditioners are used by the rural family household.